Digital Marketing Radio, episode 111. Is Apple's iOS 9 a game changer?
DigitalMarketingRadio.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by deepcrawl.com. When you need a comprehensive website crawler that identifies and monitors how your site is performing through the eyes of a search engine, I recommend DeepCrawl. DeepCrawl gives a complete and accurate picture of the health of your website architecture and identifies where the gaps are. Get your free website crawl of up to 10,000 URLs at deepcrawl.com/report. That's deepcrawl.com/report.
The Big Interview with David Bay.
I'm joined today by one of Australia's top digital marketers. He's the creator of The Challenge and the founder of MagCast. Welcome to DMR, Mr. Ed Dale.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me, David.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. Yeah, thank you for coming on. You can find Ed over, among other places, over at eddale.co. Ed, let's dive deep into digital marketing right from the off and say, should businesses that only have websites and don't have apps be worried, or is it perfectly okay just to potter on and just have a website?
Look, I think those days of just having a website are, numbered. I really do. And there's a number of reasons for that. And the way when people ask me this, I simply say, well, have a look at your stats. What are your stats telling you? Typically, I haven't asked anybody recently that hasn't had 20% of their traffic or more coming from a mobile device. 20% is on the low end. Here in Australia now, 55% of all business traffic is on sites are being surfed from a mobile device. So that tells you something. But here's something that's even more important, I think, David, and particularly for people with e-commerce bents and so on, is that, if you're on a phone and you're looking up clotheslines, you have a big problem. You've probably got your clothesline sticking through your lounge room window or something like that, and you need to replace it because, of all the things you can be doing on your phone, you could be playing Candy Crush. You could be doing any number of awesome, cool stuff on your phone, yet you are searching for clotheslines. And this is the thing. I don't think people think through the mentality of people when they're on the different devices, because often they're looking at your site for different reasons when they're on that device. So look, if 20% of your traffic is coming from a mobile device, are you spending 20% of your development resources making sure your mobile experience is excellent? And I don't think a responsive website is enough. I truly don't. And I think with the announcements from Google I/O and in particular Apple at WWDC with what they're going to be doing with iOS 9, I think it's going to become even more important.
I liked your answer there, actually. Just look at your stats, because a lot of businesses, as you say, are having a lot of mobile traffic, but I've looked at certain industry segments that are only getting, say, 10% of the traffic from mobile and the vast majority desktop, because their offering is professional-based and the vast majority of the audiences are on desktops during the day. But then you'll get other industries which are 50+% mobile. So if you're ignoring mobile there, obviously, then it is potentially to the detriment of your business in the future. You talked about apps on phones there. So are you talking about apps on Apple devices mainly? Is that the main place to be concerned about when it comes to apps? Or if
Well, I was going to say, David, it's you have to look at your market. The reason I tend to look at the Apple devices first for most things is not because, I am an Apple fanboy. There's no question about it. I'm a huge admirer of the company. But to me, the key thing, most of the stuff that I sell is not required for life on this planet. As much as it's not required for, feed food. It's not required for shelter. It's not a utility like electricity or even the phone itself as a phone bill. I wish it was that important, but it's not. So I rely on disposable income for people who are interested in buying my stuff. And I suspect a lot of listeners and people watching this would be in the same circumstance. And that to me is that's really key here, And so when you look at the stats are incontrovertible. People tell me, well, 80% of the world's on Android devices. Yes, but 88% of the people with disposable income are on iOS devices. So that's why I tend to look at iOS devices first. But more importantly than that, forget the Android iOS thing for a second. It comes down to this thing, and both Google and Apple have really got this in their sights right now. And that is user experience, right? And forget us, we're not real people, right? We're geeks and technical people, and we love our devices and so on. Joe and Jane Smith, civilians, as I like to call them, they love their devices too, but they also have no appreciation for the technology. When my wife is uploading a photo to Facebook, and she, if it's not on her feed in 4 seconds, she's wondering what's going on. And that speed is everything. Google has been focused on speed ever since it started. Apple is focused on speed. And that experience, people now expect with their mobile devices to have instantaneous experiences, right? Mm. And on the web, we're used to waiting, right? We're used to pages reloading and so on. So what's happening now is Joe and Jane Smith are used to that. They don't like waiting. And so if your experience of your website, particularly like a responsive website, is super slow, people are just going to click off to Candy Crush or wherever else because they want instantaneous. That's where the whole market is going. And I think Google realizes this. Apple certainly realize this in a big, big way. And I think as digital people who are promoting their products and services or providing products and services through online have to take that into account now.
I think a lot of businesses, in relation to your answer there, a lot of businesses in general forget about what it's like to be a newbie or experiencing a product or service for the first time. And they're obviously very used to what they do, and they understand the intricacies of it. And just because they fully understand it, they think that someone looking at whatever they do for 30 seconds should immediately understand it. And they don't.
No, that's right. You look at, you look at that loading a picture up onto Facebook. What people don't realize, I get it, is that you've just uploaded a photo, which is, 3 or 4 megabytes in size, and that's gone to a old power station in Finland that Facebook has converted into a massive photo database farm, and they've actually submerged it under with seawater to keep it cool, and it has gone from here in Melbourne all across the other side of the planet, and then it has come back here in a matter of seconds. That is a phenomenal, incredible experience. But if it's not as quick as turning on your remote or changing a channel on TV, Joe and Jane Smith don't care. They don't want to wait. They want instantaneous. And that's what I think, as I say, Android, iOS, Apple, iOS realise. And I think as deliverers of information online, we need to realise that too.
So Apple are in the process of releasing iOS 9 as we speak. And one of the features that they're releasing is in-app search. So that allows Apple to crawl the website of an app, actually, and also allows the app to handle deep linking and support structured data to surface within the search. So could any of that be a complete game changer, do you think?
I think this is huge. And Google are doing a very similar thing from their googly angle. Now, the way I describe it, the best way to describe, there are 2 different philosophies here, both trying to get the same result, but 2 different ways. What Apple is doing, which is pretty extraordinary when you think, is they are trying to put your search engine in your pocket. So in other words, when you search for something, the first thing it's going to do is look through everything on your actual phone in a very, that sounds creepy, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's super private because that query no longer goes to Google. That query, so if you are looking for, I don't know, if you're looking for reading glasses, if you have actually reading glasses is a rubbish example. I don't know why I thought. No, if you've got an e-commerce app that's got reading glasses in it as part of that, then it will surface that first. Another great example with their news app, the new news app, which is very, very interesting, particularly for digital publishers, is that if you're looking for an article on, say, the FIFA fiasco that's going on at the moment, it will surface news items that are on your phone first before it ever goes to the web. It doesn't need to go to the web anymore to provide the information. And it's really clever when you think about it, because if I've chosen on my, people might use Flipboard as another example of this. If I've picked the news sources that I like and trust in this news app or on Flipboard, or indeed, for digital publishers, magcasters, people publishing their own magazines, I much rather get an article than that. Then think about what's happening at the moment. So if I search for something right now on a device, I do it either in the search screen, or the vast majority of people type in the little URL bar at the top of Safari, and then you type in, so if it's NBA finals, you type in NBA finals, and you get a list comes up of Google or Bing search results. Now we all know that now we have to trawl through these links, right, to get that. Now keep in mind too, remember this experience problem that we've got. As soon as you go to the web on your mobile device, everything slows down immensely. You've got to wait for it to load. You've got to wait for it to come up, and you might find it's the wrong thing. So what Apple's trying to do is completely shortcut that entire process. And it's very exciting for people who have apps, because, another example that they actually showed me, WWDC, is, for example, if you're looking for a place to stay in New York City and you've got Airbnb on your mobile phone, it will surface content based on what Airbnb have. Now, what's exciting for digital publishers is that if enough people who click on your particular bit of information on the search result, Apple very cleverly, this is part of the deep linking, then surfaces that publicly. In other words, they've got to serve, people think, Apple are going to compete with Google on search. No, they're not at all. They're not interested. You're never going to be able to type, you're never going to see the Apple search engine. You're never going to see that. You can never go to Apple search and type in a phrase like you can Google. They're not interested in that. But if a particular article on the NBA finals is doing really well and it's part of a certain app, if enough people click on that, that gets surfaced up to the public, as long as it's being given permission for that to happen. And then that will appear on other people's devices, and it will encourage you to download the app as well, which is incredibly exciting from a discovery perspective as well. But what it's all about is it's all a focus on user experience. So the thing that's the slowest experience on your phone right now is looking stuff up. And if they can do this on the phone, on the device, and then your search queries literally happen like that from information and sources that you've already know and trust, that's pretty exciting. And what it does mean, and I think this is let's look at the other side of this. Because Apple's batting pretty much 100% when it comes to hardware. When it comes to software and services, they're not. They've had their hits, they've had their misses, big time, right? So this is all a little bit assumptive in the sense that we've got to wait till September to see how this all rolls out. But if they have their way, think about this. I'll put my marketer's hat on for a second. All of a sudden, 800 million devices across the planet. And remember, the people who own these 800 million devices are the people with the disposable income. Okay, so with my, marketer's hat on, I'm going, well, hang on a second. All of a sudden, Google is not getting any of this data anymore. It's not getting my search recommendations when I'm looking at it on the mobile device, because they just never see it, right? They just never see it. And that is fascinating. That has implications, right? Because all of a sudden advertising through YouTube, advertising through Google on these properties becomes problematic. Then all of a sudden, Apple made available all these ad blockers for Safari and content and cookie security. And you can see there is a global strategy away from search out in the world to search on your device and having literally your search engine in your pocket. And I think that's particularly fascinating. And from a marketer's perspective, that's, I've got to figure out how to be able to get in front, get attention from people. So that's where apps become all the more important, because if your app with your content, and by the way, and this is a complete radical reversal by Apple, for years, if you've created an app that effectively reflects your website on the device, it would be rejected, right? They don't want you to replicate websites on the phone. Now, what it's saying is that you should have apps which index all of your web content and be out, and to make sure that they can then index that on your phone. So it's a complete and pretty radical reversal. But ultimately, what people have to understand is, ask yourself this and ask your customers this: how do they search on their mobile device? When I ask anybody, they either swipe down and type a search in there, or they tap on their browser bar. Now, when you type on that browser bar, you're going to get information from your phone first. And that's a big deal.
And as long as if it's great quality information, then people are going to love that and keep on using that as their means of search as well. It could be quite incredible. I mean, we could almost be on the cusp of a change of the way that digital is done. Because if you look back into the 1980s, Microsoft were the big software company. They didn't really have an eye on the internet, and that's why kind of Google took them over. But Google have been focusing on the net really, and providing searches, and they've moved into personalization and personalized search. But searching within content on your device really is a significant level up from personalized search, isn't it?
Well, it's completely the opposite approach. They take the complete. So what are Google doing? They are effectively going to do the same thing, right? They announced at Google I/O that you're going to be able to deep link and have content searched in your app. However, everything's being done centrally, because that's what they're really good at, right? So all that information is going to be become part of Google, and that's going to be important to, if you've got a lot of your users with Android devices, you will absolutely want to support that as well, because it will give a better search result. But they do theirs centrally, and this all goes down to Apple's and Google's philosophy are very different. Apple makes their money from selling hardware. Google makes their money from selling information effectively, so providing that information. Google, never count out Google. They're incredibly smart, and they got caught. First of all, Google is a search engine of intent, okay? Because you go to Google with your intent for something. You go to Facebook because you want to catch up with friends. You're not there with intent. You're there to see what's happening with your circle. And that's what, Facebook is going to be fine with all of this, by the way, because people open the Facebook app all the time. In fact, Facebook will only benefit from this, because if they surface some of your feed content into this, well, it's just going to encourage you to use Facebook more. They're cool. They're fine. But what Google didn't know about you as the individual for years and years. And that's what Google Plus was all about. It wasn't about a social network. Yeah, sure, if it took off as a social network, they'd be very excited. But ultimately, it was about uniting all that information. People forget, the best part of Android experience, I think, is Google Now. It's brilliant. Really, really good. It almost anticipates, you at 5 o'clock, or for me at 5 o'clock, I'm always taking the girls swimming. So if I swiped up on Google Now, it would give me the traffic information for that swimming, because it knows. I haven't had to tell it. It just knows based on my thing. And it's like magic. It's really, really cool. People forget that Google didn't do any of Google Now until Apple first did Siri. And Siri was like I described it in a blog post at the time of, Apple really punched Google in the nose with Siri. But in Beechworth, if you're going to be in a fight in a bar, it's not about how to start it. You've got to know how to end it. And Apple gave them a punch in the nose, but Google, this is right in their bailiwick. This is their experience. This is their expertise, and they're brilliant at that. So Google Now really has raced far, far ahead, and Apple have realized they need to be able to provide an experience, but their philosophy is they don't want to know your personal information. It's very, very important to them. It's part of their belief systems and DNA. So what they need to surface this information on the device. So results are the same. What's the end user experience here? Quicker access to information. The faster you can access the information, the less time that you have to wait, and the better the information, the better the experience. If I get a better search experience, I'm going to love my iPhone even more, and I'll continue to buy an iPhone. And that's where Apple makes all their money. So that's the thinking. But then if all of a sudden, if all those people with disposable income aren't getting inverted commas exposed into Google with their preferences and so on, Google's search engine doesn't become as good by definition. And all of a sudden, you start looking at, well, where am I advertising? Where am I spending my advertising dollars? Is it effective? This is not going to happen in 12 months, I should say, too, David. This is going to be interesting over the next 5 years.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. So what about other devices? Where do they fit in? Is it still going to be the phone or the tablet as the primary device that all this activity takes place on? Or is there going to be a significant place for things like the Apple Watch?
I think my view is things will revolve effectively around the phone. The phone is the personal device. I've got an Apple Watch, and I think it is absolutely fantastic. It's literally the first thing I put on in the morning, and that's the last thing I take off at night. And it's actually allowed me to be better informed, because usually on the phone I turn notifications off all the time. But it was annoying because then I missed notifications from key people that I actually want to get. But I couldn't stand the buzzing. I couldn't stand the vibration or the noise or the dinging. Whereas with the watch, it just taps me on the wrist. And I know, because I've sorted out my notifications, that if I'm getting a tap on the wrist, it's somebody that I really do want to get a tap on the wrist from. And so I found it fantastic from that point of view. I can't wait till the apps are native on the actual device, but it's an accessory. Okay,
yeah, do you think it's something for early adopters at the moment, or is it something that the majority of people...
and I think that's been part of Apple's strategy, is that, again, Joe and Jane Smith don't like to wait, and the app situation on the watch at the moment is not good. It's diabolical in a sense, because if you try to open up an app, you get this little spinning thing for like 5-10 seconds. It's crazy. Like it's an eternity. It's no good at that. But when in August, September, when the new the second version of the software comes out, all of the changes. And that's, funnily enough, I think that will coincide with widespread availability. At the moment, even though I think they're selling gazillions of them, they're selling them to the true believers, right? They're selling them to the people who are comfortable with it. And as I said, the more understanding you are of technology, the more you are accepting of little delays and things like that. I don't think Joe and Jane Smith, civilians, are accepting of delays at all. But I love it. But to me, the phone is the device which a lot of these things then rotate off. I'm a huge fan of the iPad. I love using that when I'm out and about and travel. It's been fantastic, and that's only going to get way better. But at the end of the day, sometimes I leave the iPad at home, right? Sometimes I leave my laptop. Sometimes I leave that. I don't leave my phone. I don't leave my watch.
Exciting times, so much happening there. But let's.
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah. Okay. Let's segue into the second section of our discussion. So that focuses more on your thoughts on where digital marketing's been and where it's heading in general. So starting off with
software I couldn't live without.
So what software do you currently use in your business that if someone took away from you, it would significantly impact your marketing success?
I think probably the first the thing, if they took away my ability, I suppose it's a category of apps, which is effectively take away my RSS readers. Right. So they took away because the way I've got things set up in terms of being able to get all my information on a mobile device and have to be able to do that so efficiently now with Mr. Reader on the iPad and Reader with 2 E's to be trendy on the the iPhone, that's like my Encyclopedia Britannica. All the information and topics that I'm interested in gets streamed into my phone like magic, and I can very quickly triage all that information, and some of it will go off to be tweeted, some of it will be put into buffer, some of it will go to a Facebook page, some of it will be saved to Evernote for a potential future article. That traffic cop of information, if I was to think of one thing, I'd hate to be without that.
Wow, okay. And a slightly more challenging question. What piece of software don't you use, but you've heard good things about, and you intend to try at some point in the near future?
That is a tough question for me, because if I hear about something, I'm pretty desperate to try it pretty much straight away. I'll tell you what, Slack is probably the app, and I'm cheating because we are using it, but what Slack represents, and for people who haven't heard of it, it's sort of like instant messaging crossed with project management, crossed with group software. It sounds really weird, and even if you go to Slack, the website, SLACK, but to me, what it is, it's the platform for running company communications going forward. Think about this, right? It's how do you communicate with your best friends right now, right? How do you communicate? What's the number one method of communication? If I'd asked that question 25 years ago, it would be picking up a landline phone, right? And you'd be talking to them. If I asked that question 5 years ago, it would be probably talking to them on their mobile phone. But if I was asking that question today, it would be text, right? It would be messaging. That's how most people communicate with their friends. Like, the long conversation on a phone is rarer and rarer, but I think we all communicate collectively more because we're using text, and we're texting people, and we're communicating that way. And I think Slack is built from the ground up from that fact, and the fact that we use mobile devices and we're on the go and all those sorts of things. So that would be a piece of software that I think a lot of people may not have seen, but when you use it, it's pretty phenomenal.
The great thing about asking these questions consistently is obviously I can see the trend in terms of a few people saying the same thing, and a couple of people have said Slack now, and it's not something that I've really actively used. I'm aware of as well, but if it's repeated by a few top digital marketers, then it's obviously something that people should be looking into. So interesting. But I'll include notes to the RSS tools and Slack in the show notes at digitalmarketingradio.com. And but moving on to,
I wish I would have.
So I'd like you to look back on the very first day that you were involved in trying to market a business online. What didn't you do so well? What do you wish that you would have done differently?
Let me think about that one. I think experimentation, is the testing and experimentation. I really think that's an understanding that the standard result of something that you test is typically negative, right? So in other words, you'll do 10 tests and maybe 1 or 2 will improve on your control, and that doing these in the field tests rather than sitting back and thinking, is this piece of copy going to work or headline going to work? Rather than doing that whole process in my head and then hoping that I've come up with the best possible solution and releasing it, I should have just got it out in the field and tested in the field. That to me would be the thing that I would have liked to have told myself back in day one, that you're going to get much better results and you're going to get much better clarity of information from actual experiments than you will hypothetically designing something or doing a business plan or any of those sorts of things. And that advice goes tenfold today, because back when I started, of course, traffic was super duper easy. All right, it was simple. You could pay Google 5 cents and you could upload 30,000 words in a day and just see what's stuck and then get rid of all the stuff that you didn't get anything from, right? Traffic was easy. Product creation, doing what we're doing now would have cost literally, tens of thousands of dollars in just transmission fees, let alone actually being able to have the technology to do it, right? It's now that's turned, right? It's 100% opposite. So now here in 2015, it's product that's easy, and traffic and getting people's attention is hard because there's so many awesome things you can be doing. In the old days, we used to say on the internet, oh, there's so much garbage online. You have to wait. The job is to wade through all the garbage, right? Now, the problem is there's so much awesome stuff that you could be doing. There's so much incredibly cool stuff that you could be doing at any particular point in time that, goodness me, that's what we're competing against. To our markets, getting that attention is priceless. So iterating and testing is the biggest, to me, is the biggest change I've seen over the 10 years, and the advice that I would give myself earlier on. I often say, the person who tests most in a market is the winner, will be the winner in the market. Notice I didn't say successful tests. Very important distinction here, right? Experiments, because that's the other thing I tell myself, is the result of your test is out of your control. You're dealing with other human beings and other chemical reactions in other brains. You don't have control over that. All you have control over is the ability to conduct the test and flick the switch to turn it on. But here's the thing. Whatever the result, you are more certain than you were before you started the experiment, right? You've learned something. Maybe you've learned something that doesn't work, but you've learned something. You've become more certain in your particular niche. And so the more experiments you conduct, the more certainty you get, regardless of whether they were, inverted commas, a positive or a negative. That's immaterial. It's the number that you're doing, quantity. It's the quantity of tests, not the quality of the tests, is most important. And that's what I'd really like to tell myself. In fact, I'm sorry, this is a long answer, but this is really, really cool. They actually did a Stanford study, just released fairly recently. They did a study of 2 ceramics classes, pottery, right? Creating pottery. Yeah. And they divided up the class, and they were given an assignment. And the assignment was, to half the class, it was produce one piece of awesome pottery, and your entire grade will be on this one awesome piece of pottery, right? That you do your best, right? Which is, when you think about it, that's standard, that's tradition. The other half of the class was told, you will be marked purely on the quantity of pottery that you create. So the number of pots that you throw, effectively, right? So the more pieces you make, right? The more pieces you make, the higher your mark. Guess what happened? So they got independent pottery judges in. Where do you think all of the top pieces judged by independent judges came from? The quality section, where everybody spent all their time working on one thing, or the quantity section, where they were just throwing out things as much as they could?
From what you were saying before, it's got to be quantity.
Correct. Exactly right. And this is the thing. And that, to me, crystallizes something I've seen, having done, doing the challenge, and, having introduced over 300,000 people now to online business through the challenge. That's what I see again and again and again. It's the people that are out there doing testing in the field, not sitting back and thinking in their heads or on paper, I wonder if this will work. I wonder if that'll work. The people who are successful, they actually say, they don't think about it. Go, okay, let's do the test, see what happens.
I would summarize what you said there in 6 words, which is sharpen the saw while you're running.
Yeah, there you go. That could be dangerous, though, David. That is not necessarily. I would have to put some sort of warning on this podcast.
Maybe I'll have to refine that quote. Yeah.
Don't run with a chainsaw. It's not smart to be sharpening a chainsaw. There's lots of pointy things there, buddy. You can really. There might be children watching this who might
just put a parental guidance sticker on here, and we'll be all right.
Absolutely, you've got to watch that.
Well, moving on to
the this or that round.
So this is the quick response round. So 10 quick questions, and just
I'll
2
struggle
rows.
with these.
Try not to think about the answer too much. Okay, and that's going to be challenging, maybe. And you're only allowed to say the word both on one occasion. So ready to go?
Okay.
Email or Twitter?
Twitter,
Audio or video?
video,
Affiliates or display advertising?
affiliates,
Facebook or Google Plus?
Facebook,
Online press releases or one-on-one relations?
one-on-one relationships,
Paid search or SEO?
paid search,
Email contact form or telephone number?
email contact form,
Website or app?
app,
Social subscriber or email subscriber?
email subscriber,
And local marketing or global marketing?
local.
That wasn't so much of a challenge, was it?
That was pretty easy, actually.
So definitely Facebook over Google Plus, even though they're
Oh,
diminishing their organic reach and pages, there's still
absolutely.
the opportunity.
To me, but here's the thing: it's pay to play, right? Give Facebook the money, and Facebook will give you the if people ask me where to spend their first advertising dollar, and I don't know anything, and if I had to give an answer without doing any sort of due diligence, not a good idea, by the way, but let's just assume it's like running and sharpening our saws at the same time, is I would always advise Facebook, because we're consistently seeing across, and we're very fortunate to see a lot of different publishers in a lot of different niches, and Facebook advertising is killing it at the moment. You're not going to get it for free stuff, but Google Plus, I don't think anybody's on it. Realistically, It might be. Actually, that's not fair. There's billions of people on Google Plus. When you're on YouTube, you're on Google Plus. When you're using the Google search engine, you're on Google Plus, right? But in terms of people's where they are and where they are with intent, or where they are, see, Facebook knows what you like, and that's so important. And so you can target your advertising. So, and we can email you. We can use our lists of people who've bought particular products, and we can upload those lists into Facebook, and then they match those, and we can target advertising directly to them. There's so many powerful techniques that Facebook's a no-brainer when you ask that question.
So this might be a repeat of the previous answer, but let's see.
The $10,000 question.
If I was to give you $10,000 and you had to spend it over the next few days on a single thing to grow your business, what would you spend it on, and how would you measure success?
Yeah, I think it would be. You're right. It would be Facebook. That would be the thing that I would do that. And your success is your return on investment. I would use them. So to be just advertising though is, and this is actually important. So this does extend the answer. In a sense, what am I trying to? I'm trying to build a tribe. What is job one for any online business? In my view, is building a tribe. And specifically, and one of the questions you asked in the quickfire round, I think was, social or email.
Yeah.
Today, email is still the king, queen, and the entire court. Right? It's just no brainer. If I've got 3,000 passionate Twitter followers, or I've got 3,000 passionate people who open my emails, it's no contest, right? Yeah. We want to build that list. We want to build that following, and building a tribe. To me, if people aren't even prepared to give you their email address, do you think they're going to buy stuff from you? You haven't obviously built any relationship whatsoever. So to me, spending that 10,000, let's take 8,000 of it for ad spend, but then let's use 2,000 to create a giveaway, a response, something that people would genuinely solve a really big problem in that market to give away, so that we're building a list. So we're offering something of incredible value. So people will be thrilled at giving me my email, because we're answering the problems that are in the person's head. And that's why Facebook's so good, because you can start to look from a demographic perspective. I mean, it lets you advertise demographically, and history of advertising here. But demographic advertising meant TV, it meant radio, right? You couldn't know who you were doing. Facebook gives you the best of both worlds. It's Facebook, but it's personal. Demographic, but it's personal. It's pay-per-click. It's cost for performance. So that is really interesting to me. And I know my $8,000 right now will go an awful long way. I'd probably actually, now I think about it, if I was to slip something else in there, YouTube. And this would depend on the niche particularly. Like if there's a lot of YouTube audience for the types of things that I'm doing, there's some amazing people are doing some amazing things in terms of YouTube traffic, retargeting, targeting specific YouTube videos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positive, really, really cool stuff there. But I would always make sure that I've got a funnel. You want to spend that a couple of $1,000s on creating a great funnel. And what I mean by that is that you've got a great giveaway. You've got something that you can give away in return for an email, and then you've got a sequence which educates, which informs, which binds people to your tribe, and ultimately offers them something to buy.
Yeah, I was just talking to Nathan Haig, a fellow Australian actually, in episode 109 of Digital Marketing Radio, and he's really into YouTube advertising, and he was going on about how you can actually get pre-roll ads for nothing as long as people actually click on the ad within the first 30 seconds. So
I think unfortunately they're changing. And this is only literally by the time people probably hear this, that has been the case for the last year or so, but I believe they're changing it, which is sad, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because it's still, if you paid just to give people a rough metric, if you were paying $7 for a keyword on the Google search engine, which is not, by the way, unheard of in this day and age, you'd be paying 70 cents for a YouTube click. So it's still that you can get some incredible bang for your buck.
Test and learn. But we could carry on our conversation. I know we could, but let's try and distill what you've said there into one particular thing, if we can do that. Just finishing off with
my number one takeaway.
So, you've offered a lot of great advice in the conversation, but what would you say is the number one single most important step that our listeners just need to take away and implement within their own businesses?
Look, and we've mentioned this concept a couple of times, but it's worth emphasizing, is that testing in the field. So rather than, sort of wring hands and think, well, is this campaign going to work? Is this going to work? Is this ad going to work? Is this ad not going to work? Test it. Get it out there and test. And because, like I said, the person who conducts the most experiments wins. Now, the reason people don't like to test is because they don't like failure. And it's not your fault, by the way. Anybody who's listening to this, we're conditioned to this. Our entire schooling, and this is a great tragedy of it, is about getting the right answer and the wrong answer. And we're meant to feel bad when we get the wrong answer and feel good when we get the right answer. But in business, typically, for every 10 wrong answers, we get one right one. And that's cool. That's fine. You can have the most incredibly successful business in the world based on that. But you need to be testing, because often the things that actually work are not the things that you thought would work. And I've got a great track record here where I think, this is going to kill. This is going to be fantastic. And it's nothing. And then stuff that I thought wouldn't work in 100 years is the thing that was the killer trick, right? That is the way it's gone, and that's just life, So
keep on testing in the field, but don't take any chainsaws with you.
That's it. That's exactly right.
Great. Okay, well, that, I reckon, takes us to the end of our discussion today. So thank you so much for your advice, your time. What's the best way for our audience to find out more about you and what you do?
Best is eddale.co, eddale.co, and you'll see all the Twitter and all that sort of stuff. There's one thing in specific, though, that I've been really enjoying and doing, and I've been focusing on my YouTube live channel recently. And so if you just do a search for Ed Dale on YouTube and subscribe there, I'm doing a lot of, if what I've been talking about today has been interesting, I do a lot of talking on all of that on my YouTube channel. So check out my YouTube channel for a lot of good information.
Absolutely. Okay, great stuff. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us as well. If you like what you heard, I'd really appreciate your feedback. So just go to digitalmarketingradio.com/iTunes, go straight to the app and leave an honest rating and review. That'd be wonderful. It would do a lot of good for our ranking on iTunes as well. Finally, I'm also hosting my own live show every Friday as well. It's actually 4 o'clock UK time every Friday. Big thumbs up from Ed there, so that's great. 4 o'clock in the UK, that's 11 a.m. in New York. I'm not sure what time it is in Sydney. It's sort of some horrible time in the middle of the night.
Afternoon?
In the UK, yeah.
It's what is it? That's 7 a.m.
Oh, that's okay. That's just about doable, yeah.
Get up for breakfast.
Why not, yeah. So until we meet again, adios, dear viewer, and thank you for joining us, Ed.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.